You know, when you're on a business trip abroad and suddenly get a message saying, "We are firing you, your card is blocked. Deal with it, deal with yourself." It's not just upsetting, it's like a punch in the gut. My mother works in an office and I feel very strongly about this issues. This isn't just a story for views, it's about real experiences, about how people are treated. We want everyone to recognize themselves in this and not repeat the mistakes of others. All names, companies and addresses are fictitious and have been changed.
The second I saw the dashboard alert, I stopped chewing. I was halfway through a grilled snapper at La Habichuela, watching the sun melt into the Gulf and the screen lit up. Override permissions changed. Admin key A1 flagged. My stomach didn't drop. It calcified. Because that key? That was mine, and I sure as hell didn't touch it. I set the fork down, tapped into the portal, and scanned the logs. Somebody had accessed the vendor credential interface from our Cincinnati HQ, someone without authority. I refreshed twice. My login had been shadowed, mimicked, maybe even copied, which made no sense, because there was only one active admin signature tied to our supplier account. Mine. If you're into stories like this, where things look calm until someone pulls the wrong string and the whole system shreds, do us a favor. Hit the like button and subscribe. It keeps these stories going and helps the team bring more to life. Only takes a second, but it means everything. I paid the bill without finishing the wine. Walked the 10 minutes back to the resort through the kind of warm night that makes you forget spreadsheets even exist. Only I couldn't forget. Not with the override alert still pulsing in my head like a warning light. Back in my room, I connected through my laptop's secure shell and checked the backup logs. Clean. My license key hadn't been revoked, but an override was triggered, which meant someone either didn't know how any of this worked, or they knew exactly how it did and thought I'd be too far away to stop it. By 10:30 p.m., I'd toggled two protocols: API key lockdown and admin privilege lockout pending board reconfirmation. Both were buried under a clause from the original supplier agreement I negotiated back in 2016, Clause 8B to be exact. It stated plainly, in the event of unauthorized access or attempted reassignment of administrative control without board notarized countersignature, supplier-side systems shall revert to license holder protocol. In English, you mess with the contract mid-cycle, the system goes dark. And I was still the license holder. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was scared, but because I knew that someone, probably Blake, was about to learn the hard way that control isn't something you can reassign by Slack message or impulse, especially not while I was still technically on company business, representing our procurement arm at the largest supplier event of the year. I woke up the next morning to two texts, one from our supplier lead, "Morning, got a rewrote request from your team back home, want me to process it." The other, sent 8 hours earlier while I was still walking back from dinner, "We're letting you go, old-timer. Cards deactivated. Figure out your way home." No, thank you. No phone call, just a sterile little betrayal dropped like a text to your ex. I stared at it for a full minute, then typed my response. "Understood. Thanks for the update." And I hit send. I sat there for a second, the kind of stillness where even the bartender stopped asking if I wanted another. You ever feel insulted so precisely it almost makes you laugh? Not angry, not hurt, just surgical. That text didn't just cut me loose, it tried to erase me like I was a sticky note left on someone else's monitor. "We're letting you go, old-timer." Old-timer, like I was a damn rotary phone in a Zoom world. He didn't even use my name. Blake. Blake, who still printed every contract so he could underline things with a red Sharpie and look decisive. Blake, whose claim to strategy was suggesting we pivot to verticals every time someone asked a hard question in a meeting. Blake, who assumed the supplier renewal was a rubber-stamped formality and not the legally bound multi-year pipeline contract I'd personally architected and nested inside my procurement LLC. He thought he was replacing a link in the chain. He had no idea I was the chain. I didn't even finish my drink. Just closed the tab, tipped in cash, and walked out of that bar with the same calm I walked into every investor review Blake tried to skip. On the elevator ride up to my room, I opened the supplier dashboard. I hovered over the override toggle for half a breath, then clicked. My interface confirmed the action. All non-primary admin access suspended per clause 8B. And just like that, the company's fulfillment backend, Every vendor order form, bulk shipment schedule, tiered pricing tier, all the API keys used to coordinate logistics, disappeared from view. Not erased, just placed under lock and key. Mine. I closed the laptop, turned off my phone, and exhaled. The kind of breath you don't know you're holding until the fight walks itself out of the room. I'd always prepared for this moment, though I didn't expect it to come with a mojito in hand. What they didn't know, and Blake especially, was that Clause 8B wasn't just an access rule. It was a compliance bomb. It had teeth. Removing the license holder without formal board notarization triggered a suspension timer. The system was still humming, but the moment they tried to push a change, the blackout would start. 60 hours of no orders, no vendor coordination, no fulfillment updates, unless reinstated. And the only person who could reinstate it? He just got a $17 margarita and a polite text to figure out her own ride home. My laptop dinged. Auto reply confirmation sent to the vendor help desk. Access suspended pending reinstatement of contracting officer per clause 8B. I left it there, not out of spite, not to be petty, because Blake hadn't fired a problem. He'd fired the protocol. The email came through at 7:08 a.m. sharp, like the supplier's internal clock knew something had gone off kilter. Subject line, access confirmation? Simple, polite, but I knew what it meant before I even opened it. Hey, your replacement asked us to reroute access. Just checking, are we green to do that? My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a second. I could have ignored it, let the silence speak for itself. But Blake needed to feel this, and legal needed it in writing. So I replied, as per Section 8B, license and access rights remain with the contracting officer of record. That's me, until revoked in writing via notarized board resolution. I added nothing more. Didn't threaten, didn't explain. Just facts, written like I'd been preparing for this day for 8 years. Because I had. By 9:17 a.m., Blake tried pushing access anyway. He CC'd half the legal team and tacked on a passive-aggressive note. Need this resolved ASAP. System blocking our transition plan. Please clear. He assumed legal would fix it. He assumed wrong. At 11:42, the CEO got the forward. Subject, urgent access dispute. Blake's request. Message, access request denied. Contract authority terminated mid-travel. Vendor control retained. That's all it said. No spin, no sugar, just a legal body blow in one clean sentence. I pictured Blake sitting in that glass-walled corner office they gave him too soon, reading that line over and over while trying not to look rattled. The same guy who once asked me what tiered fulfillment gates meant during a board review. The same guy who interrupted me mid-presentation to ask why the supplier SLA included so many decimal points. I knew the next step before he did. He'd try to log in himself, probably even call the supplier's IT desk directly, hoping Charm would bypass compliance. So I opened the portal on my end, hit refresh. The banner had changed. Suspended. Await contracting authority reinstatement. Big, bold font. No wiggle room. No workaround. Every tab in that system, price schedules, invoice verification, order routing, volume thresholds, was now grayed out for anyone but me. Not deleted. Just paused, like holding your breath before impact. It wasn't revenge. It was restraint. The system was doing exactly what it was built to do: protect continuity, prevent reckless handoffs, and hold the damn line. Something Blake would have known if he'd ever bothered to read the contract he was trying to overwrite. I sipped my coffee on the hotel balcony and watched the poolside staff line up loungers in perfect rows. Meanwhile, 1,700 miles away, the man who fired me mid-negotiation was trying to figure out how to explain to the CEO that the entire supply chain was sitting behind a digital firewall with my initials on the keys. He hadn't fired an employee. He'd unplugged the engine. Friday morning came with no fanfare, just silence where there should have been movement. I didn't need access to the dashboard to know something had cracked. The supplier's autosync reports should have gone out at 3:15 a.m. sharp. 14 files cross-referenced, merged, and pushed live to our internal fulfillment system. Instead, nothing. No order confirmations, no restock pings, no scheduled dispatches for next week's East Coast contracts. I wasn't there, but the symptoms followed a pattern I knew better than I knew most people. Delays in procurement aren't loud. They're invisible until you run out of things to sell. By noon, the warehouse queue had stalled. Teams tried to reconfigure the integrations, bypass the error messages, even strip the workflows down to manual entry, but they couldn't log in. The keys weren't just missing, they were invalid, because those keys were tied to McAllister Holdings, and McAllister Holdings was still listed as License Authority through 2026, exclusive unless revoked by board vote. I drafted that clause with 2 attorneys back when everyone assumed I'd be retiring quietly someday. They just never asked what quietly meant. That afternoon, a senior OPS manager messaged me, brief, professional. Unclear if this is a glitch or protocol, but the vendor interface is frozen across all lanes. Let us know if something can be done. I didn't answer, not out of spite. I was no longer on payroll. My contract had ended, and with it, my responsibility to respond. By Saturday morning, I was sipping coffee on the balcony while reading the escalation thread forwarded by someone on the inside. It started with confusion. Can someone explain why our orders aren't syncing? Then came denial. This is probably a firewall issue, escalating to IT. Then panic. Why does the portal say McAllister Holdings, Limited, license retained until 2026? I closed my eyes and let the breeze roll through the open door. The best one came from Carla, our logistics VP. A Slack screenshot caught it. Did Blake just fire our contracting officer mid-renewal? 4 dots blinked under her message, then nothing. By Sunday, the numbers were climbing. Missed restocks, disrupted shipments, customer penalty fees, sales teams fielding calls with 0 ETA, and Blake? He'd gone quiet. No public emails, no all hands, no emergency Zooms, just a crater where leadership was supposed to be. The system wasn't failing. It was doing exactly what I designed it to do when stripped of a verified signatory. Enter lockdown. Preserve integrity, suspend action until authority was reinstated through proper process. And the only person who could do that was watching iguanas skitter across sun-warmed stone while sipping a second coffee with a dash of cinnamon. They hadn't replaced me. They'd just unplugged their only working map. They called it an emergency alignment session, which is corporate for somebody screwed up so badly we need everyone in one room before the shareholders find out. The invite went out at 6:47 a.m. Eastern. I know because one of my former team leads forwarded it to me with a subject line that just said, "They're panicking." From what I was told, Blake tried to walk in like nothing was on fire. He kicked it off with a line about strategic repositioning, saying I'd been planning to step back for months and this was all ahead of schedule. He even used the word streamlining. That didn't go over well. Legal interrupted within 2 slides, and when legal interrupts, the walls usually shift. You terminated a signatory while they were in active contract negotiation abroad, Michelle from legal said, flat and brutal. There was no revocation process, no reassignment filed with compliance. The board wasn't consulted. We've defaulted breach. That means we violated the agreement we wrote. Silence. The kind that pulls all the oxygen out of a conference room. Then the CEO leaned forward, fingers steepled like he was praying for a different answer. Who owns the current supplier contract? Michelle didn't flinch. McAllister Holdings Limited, she built it. We never moved it. That's when the unraveling began. Legal pulled up the agreement chain, time-stamped, countersigned, nested inside 2 layers of licensing rights, and updated with a 2021 renewal clause that reinforced my entity as the primary controller until the board voted otherwise. Which, surprise, never happened. They tried to shift blame to procurement, asked why no one caught this sooner. But the answer was simple. I was procurement. And no one ever questioned it until Blake decided I was expendable because I didn't wear sneakers with suits or run strategy sessions with buzzwords and post-it notes. One of the analysts ran a backtrace on vendor-side API activity and found something else. My system, the one they tried to overwrite, had an automated weekly digest set to ping my holding account. The report read, API attempts logged, 14 valid sessions, 0 blocked attempts, unauthorized access detected. Session ID, Blake WCSO. They had receipts, and receipts don't lie. The CEO didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He just looked at Blake and said, "You fired the architect of our fulfillment pipeline during active renewal, without reassignment. And now we're locked out of our own supply chain. That call didn't end with a plan. It ended with legal putting together a liability assessment and the CEO asking for a list of everyone Blake had terminated in the past 3 weeks. My name was at the top. But the contract? That still had mine on every page. By Tuesday morning, every login attempt hit the same digital brick wall. Operations, logistics, even C-suite level access, all greeted with the same unmovable message in block gray text on a white background. Contract terminated without compliance. Await formal reinstatement from license holder. No password reset, no backdoor, no override, just silence. People scrambled. Passwords were reset dozens of times, devices rebooted. Someone even suggested calling the supplier's general hotline, like this was a cable outage and not a full-scale fulfillment lockdown. Blake sent the first email at 6:12 a.m. My inbox flagged it, but I didn't open it. Subject: Need to discuss portal access urgently. Message: just one line. Appreciate a callback at your earliest convenience. An hour later came the second. This one was longer. A little apology peppered in, something about miscommunication and hope we can clear this up amicably. Still didn't answer. Then came the call. I let it ring twice before declining. He left a voicemail. I didn't listen. But legal didn't waste time with niceties. They sent a formal letter requesting a meeting to discuss contract realignment and mutual compliance obligations. They knew. My original agreement, the one they'd never bothered to read, had a fail-safe written into the final clause. Clause 18E. Should the contracting officer be removed, terminated, or displaced without proper protocol. C8B. All associated vendor platforms shall enter compliance hold until full reinstatement is processed. The wall they hit wasn't a glitch. It was the result of their arrogance weaponizing itself. No supply chain routing, no volume forecasting, no vendor restock notifications. Just a digital embargo wrapped in legal precision. Someone on the inside, one of Blake's own direct reports, leaked a screenshot from their Slack thread to HR. Subject: Urgent. Need escalation. Message: We've lost approx 3.2 malware in coordination-related delays since Friday. Supplier blackouts impacting 3 distribution zones. Blake says he's handling it, but this was never a transition. It was a purge, and now we're bleeding. Another message underneath from a junior ops lead. Wait, did no one realize she owned the infrastructure? Apparently not. They thought I was just the middle-aged woman who ordered catering and color-coded Gantt charts. The one who always brought an extra phone charger to summits. They didn't realize the system ran because I built the system. They found out the hard way. And the system? It didn't care about ego. It only recognized protocol. The moment they realized there was no way around the system, they did what every cornered exec team does. They turned to legal and begged for a shortcut. Legal, in turn, did the one thing that should have been done before Blake ever sent that smug little termination text. They opened the archive. Not the sanitized shared drive folder, not the edited Confluence summary Blake liked to read off during board updates. The real archive. The one I'd maintained for 8 years with full audit trails, signature logs, original procurement diagrams, and every single amendment tracked to the minute. It didn't take them long. The renewal agreement from 2021, signed by me, the supplier, and our then COO, was right there. In the metadata, created by M. McAllister. Last modified, never. Each document linked back to my procurement entity. License ownership clearly spelled out, not just in body text, but in bold headers. Every contract tagged with a footnote that read, authorization valid through 2026 unless reassigned by board resolution. And there it was, Clause 11A, buried in my original onboarding letter from 2015, the very first page of the vendor continuity agreement. Sole procurement custody unless formally reassigned via board vote. They pulled the document, found the page, highlighted it, stamped, active, not expired, not ambiguous, not even up for interpretation. And when they searched for the reassignment file, they found nothing. No votes, no signatures, no board notification, just one unilateral text from Blake, firing the only person who legally had the right to control the system. To make things worse, in my archived inbox under a folder titled Compliance Triggers, They found a PDF with a name so ironic it might have been a joke if the stakes weren't 7 figures deep. Termination, protocol, flowchart, PDF color-coded, step by step, with a red box that read, "Stop. Are you attempting to remove a signatory without board counter-signature? If yes, breach." Blake had skipped all of it, and now legal had a printed copy of that flowchart taped to the inside of a file box. Blake didn't make another public appearance that week. Rumor was his badge access had been temporarily disabled after HR flagged 2 additional terminations he'd pushed through without compliance review. They froze those too, because it turned out I wasn't the only one Blake tried to erase. I was just the one holding the keys when the lights went out. The call came just after noon on Thursday. Unknown number. But I recognized the area code immediately. Upper floor switchboard, direct line from the CEO's office. I didn't pick up. Let it ring 3 times, then watch the red light blink as the voicemail landed. I made tea, opened the curtains, watched 2 pelicans glide low across the water before I sat down to listen. His voice was calm, coated in corporate varnish, but not fake. Just tired. "We'd like to revisit the terms of your departure," he said. "There's been internal reassessment. We'd value your input as a strategic advisor. Compensation and terms are flexible. Please call me directly." Strategic advisor. The polite way to say, "We burned down the kitchen and now we'd like you to help put out the fire." Quietly, respectfully, and without telling anyone how the match got lit. I didn't call back. Instead, I opened a blank email, addressed it to the CEO, CC'd legal, and typed exactly what needed to be said. The contract held. My terms were lawful. My departure was handled otherwise. McAllister Holdings remains license holder through 2026. 1 sentence. Boring, impeccable, ironclad. Below it, I added, "If reinstatement is required, I recommend Rhea Patel for transitional access. She's trained on system protocols and maintained sublicense familiarity. Escrow agreement must be signed before credential transfer." No pleasantries, no apology, no bitterness, just protocol. A few minutes later, a reply came in from legal. "Understood. We'll prepare the escrow terms and notify Ms. Patel. Thank you for the recommendation." The CEO never followed up. I didn't expect him to. He got the message, not just in my wording, but in my silence. The kind that doesn't slam a door. It just lets the hinges rust shut. And Blake? His supply chain simplification initiative, the one he paraded around for 2 quarters like a TED Talk waiting to happen, was quietly pulled from the project calendar. No announcement, no explanation. Just a little digital tombstone on the roadmap labeled Deferred Q4. It never made it past the slide deck stage, because sometimes the biggest change isn't loud. It's the quiet vacuum left behind when control slips through your hands and lands smoothly into someone else's, someone who never needed to shout to be heard. It took them 3 weeks to put the system back together, and even then, it limped. The supplier portal came back online only after escrow agreements were finalized, access tokens rebuilt from scratch, and a quarterly audit schedule hard-coded into the new protocols. Nothing moved without review, nothing approved without oversight. Every login now required dual auth with the compliance lead and the new interim license custodian. A simple procurement flow? Not anymore. They kept my frameworks, my redundancies, even my color-coded escalation matrix. Only now they came with footnotes and citations, legacy markers they didn't dare remove, quiet acknowledgments baked into a system that couldn't be overwritten without tripping alarms. Rhea stepped in just like I said she would. She followed every handoff instruction to the letter. Never overstepped, never tried to optimize. She respected the contract. That's why it worked. Meanwhile, Blake's name vanished from internal memos. Someone said he was transitioned to a board-facing strategy role, which everyone knew meant put him somewhere where he can't break things anymore. I didn't check in, didn't monitor the new dashboards. But one of the engineers I mentored sent me a screenshot 2 weeks later. The footer of every vendor access log read, "Protocol active. Custodial authority, McAllister Holdings lented it escrow supervised access in effect until January 2026. My system didn't collapse. It matured. And me? I was back in Cancun, not for work, just Because same stretch of sand, same early morning stillness. I sat barefoot in a lounge chair, black coffee in hand, watching the sun crawl up the edge of the water like it had nowhere better to be. I felt my phone buzz. A forwarded invite from legal. Upcoming procurement summit. Keynote request. I stared at it for a second, then let the screen go dark. The world didn't end because they tried to cut me out. It just paused, and when it restarted, it did so on terms I'd already written years ago, quietly, with foresight, tucked into a clause nobody thought to read. Control doesn't yell. It just waits, until you realize who's still holding the keys.